everyone. Thanks so much for joining today's training on recruiting and retaining VITA volunteers. So I am Jenny Kwong, the Outreach Associate for the Get It Back campaign. For those who may not know, the Get It Back campaign is a national effort to promote the Earned Income Tax Credit and Child Tax Credit. We work with many community organizations, advocacy groups, and other orgs to connect workers with tax credits and free tax filing. And you can always visit our website, eitcoutreach.org, for more information and resources. And join us as a partner if you have not done that already. So after talking with several partners, we realized that volunteer recruitment was an area that you needed a lot more support on. So we recently decided to add a new volunteer resources section to our website where you can find best practices for recruitment and retention, as well as flyers and messaging tips. We'll also be adding a recording of this training and next week's training to this part of the website. So today we are very lucky to have Patrice Teetermoran, the director at Volunteer Maryland. Volunteer Maryland develops volunteer programs with nonprofits, government agencies, and schools to build stronger, healthier communities. As the director, Patrice trains AmeriCorps members extensively, preparing them to serve as Volunteer Maryland coordinators throughout the state. Through over a decade of work with Volunteer Maryland, Patrice has worked closely with a variety of nonprofits, including Baltimore Cash, and has a strong understanding of the tax process. Today, we benefit from Patrice's deep knowledge of volunteer motivation and recruitment in this presentation. And I hope you find it very informative. So welcome, Patrice.
Hi, thanks, Jenny. I send out a big hello to everyone that is out there in webinar land. In a minute, we're going to find out where folks are chatting or listening in. But thanks so much for joining us. I love one of the sort of like descriptions of this webinar is valuing volunteers. That's at the heart of recruitment and retention, valuing the folks that give of their time to move your mission forward. And so today we're going to focus a lot on that. How do you value people's time in the way that you reach out to them and recruit them? And how that leads to better retention. So Jenny kind of alluded to this. I am indeed the director of an AmeriCorps program that serves in Maryland. And you can certainly read our mission, but this is at the heart of what we want to do. We want to create more effective volunteer programs that are results driven, which will hopefully lead us to the best possible outcome for sustainability for the volunteer program long term. So we're an 11-month partnership. That's a big mouthful to get to in that time. So we're up to a 3-year partnership each year. Organizations that serve in Maryland can reapply for us. So we've been in this game for a little while. We actually were created in 1992. We predate AmeriCorps by a few years. So we've been around this for a while. Our way we talk about volunteer recruitment and retention has changed along with the times. But we're going to go through some of the stuff that we talk about with our AmeriCorps members, our Volunteer Maryland coordinators. Excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather, so hopefully my voice is going to hang in there. And how we set up partnerships with organizations. So the first thing we look at is an equation. And we're going to start with a lovely, I think this is an isosceles triangle if my high school geometry is not failing me at this point. So when we enter into a partnership with organizations, we talk about two things right up front. We talk about the community that the volunteers are going to serve, not the need for volunteers, but the need in the community. Why is this important to have these volunteers come in? And then once we understand what the community need is, then we want to understand how the volunteers interact with that community need. What are they going to do to not make this situation, whatever it is, more bearable, more tolerable, but how are we going to move that needle in a way that shows positive impacts? Then we start thinking about X, that volunteer program. What do we need to put in place for that? So oftentimes when I sit down and I talk to organizations, they want a really simple formula. They want A plus B equals B, B being the volunteers. I wish it was that easy, but it's not, because there are multiple variables that go into developing a volunteer program. And beyond that, there's that, hello, like 3rd grade math, order of operation. What should I do first? What's going to make the most sense? How about we do a quick little shout out where folks are listening in from. And so I don't necessarily know if I can see the text boxes, the responses for sure, but just sort of type in, where are you, in terms of where are you listening to this presentation. It would be kind of cool to know sort of the diversity of where folks are while folks are getting their audio system straightened out.
Hi, Patrice. We are getting a lot of responses from folks, and people are calling in from everywhere. Wow, I'm having a hard time keeping up with it.
Cool.
People responding, but people are dialing in or watching from Dallas, Texas, from Knoxville, Tennessee, San Diego, California, Illinois, Flint, Michigan, Chicago, Birmingham, Elizabethtown, Kentucky, Rockford, Illinois, Wichita Falls, Texas, Williamsburg, Virginia, Minnesota, a lot more Texans, a bunch from California, North Carolina, New Jersey, Texas, Seattle, Florida, Baltimore, among many other places.
Very good.
Yeah,
very cool. So
pretty cool.
So already you have this tremendous network of people that are recruiting for very similar positions. Now the geography will be different, but the motivations could definitely be the same. So good on you for like reaching out and being a part of this webinar and starting Create a Community of Best Practices. I think that that is a really powerful step. Okay, so I'm going to jump back into presentation mode. So again, we're going to use our chat boxes, and Jenny, I'm probably going to need you to help me a little bit with just some call outs from what people are typing in. So I want you to think about your variables, not necessarily that you need volunteers, because that's a given, right? We already know that we're looking for volunteers. But when you think about that path, that equation that you're putting together for your volunteer program, what are some of the variables that you need to consider, that you need to include in your equation, that A plus B? And it can be multiple. It doesn't have to just be two. It can just be one that you're really looking for. But right now, just type into the chat box a couple of variables that you think you need. It could be better retention. It could be more online recruitment. It could be better vetting process. Any of those count as variables. There's no judgment. It is indeed a judgment-free zone. You're not graded on this, even though we're using a math analogy. So just go ahead and type them in.
So the most popular answer so far, several people have said that they need better retention for their VITA programs.
Okay.
They need flexibility, better retention and commitment, additional daytime volunteers, volunteer availability, incentives, better follow-up after signing up for volunteering. More serious, committed volunteers. Volunteers are needed for rural areas. That's important too. And then making sure that volunteers are certified at the right levels, that they have the correct skills and ability to learn new programs.
Okay, good stuff. And it sounds like a lot of folks out there really have a good understanding of what the needs are within finding these volunteers. That's good. Even though it feels really frustrating, right? You're like, but how do I get to that? It's good to know where you need to focus some resources, whether it be time, which is always time, or money. I mean, any resource you talk about, it has to be those two things. But that's good, and that's good feedback for folks that are out there to help you, because they can continue to search for best practices as well. Okay, so some of our presentation, or a good fit, is going to look at a little bit of theory behind the motivating folks to do something that otherwise they wouldn't do. We also are going to look at some practice as well, but we're going to balance those two things out. So I'm going to go back actually to start to the year 2000. Why did I choose the year 2000? It was the year when a lot of demographics started being collected for volunteer programming, and there was a lot of research done around it as well. So here's the things that we knew in the year 2000 about volunteers. Episodic volunteering started to become a thing. People were looking for opportunities to volunteer in their communities in a way that was impactful, but didn't necessarily require a really long-term commitment. There were changing demographics. The tried and true volunteers were kind of aging out. There was a more diverse or more inclusive volunteer population. Service learning played into that as well. Service learning is a mandate in Maryland. Actually, students have to volunteer. So that came into practice. This, I think, has been true forever. Small numbers of volunteers doing the most of the work. Indeed, I think that that's sort of what nonprofit work is like as well. New sources of volunteers, which I link really closely to technology, Volunteer Match, the online way to find volunteer opportunities at an instant without even leaving the confines of your home. Risk management also started to enter into more so because volunteers were taking on more heavy-duty roles, and there was also sort of this, okay, if you're delivering Meals on Wheels, a long-time volunteer opportunity, and they're entering into that resident's home, what do we need to know about that volunteer in the event something would happen? And so there really started to become a whole market around nonprofit management, risk management in terms of what your volunteers take on. And then there started to creep in some tension between volunteers and paid staff. Volunteers, again, were taking on more serious roles, and staff were like, wait a minute, are you indeed replacing me with a volunteer, which wasn't good, if that was sort of the vibe. And from the volunteers' end, it was, how come the paid staff, they don't respect the work that I do other than a one-time, once-a-year coffee and donuts? So we're going to enter into our very first theory, generational theory. It's been around for a while. AmeriCorps invested a lot of money in generational theories around 2003, 2004, because they created actually a whole recruitment messaging around boomers, and that was going to be a new piece for AmeriCorps. So they put a lot of money into it. So some of this information comes from a lot of trainings that I attended on that. So here's the theory. The theory is, depending on when you grew up, those experiences, defining events, they're going to kind of pull folks together into holding similar values and attitudes, and sometimes those similar attitudes and values will hold for life. And again, this is indeed a theory, but a theory we're going to look at. So there are 5 generations right now that have been identified and are still in play. We'll talk about the one to come as we move through this presentation. So I think at this point we actually have a polling question. And I just want to know, which generation do you identify with? And again, I think that I can't see it, but are you GI, silent, baby boomer, Gen X, or millennial? And just go ahead and click the one that you believe you are. And again, this is an unscientific poll. There are no right or wrong answers. Just click the one you think you closely are aligned with. All right, so it looks like the majority of folks are baby boomers, and then followed by Gen Xers and millennials, just as it is on the screen. So very, very good. If we can go to the next slide, that would be awesome. I don't know if I can do that. Perfect. Okay. So let's start talking a little bit about these different generations. And we're going to look, again, a lot at motivational theory, because the number one thing you need to do is recognize yourself in motivation, because that will have impacts on how you recruit volunteers. So first, and I think this is a mantra for life, find yourself and identify what you know about yourself through these various theories, maybe impacting some of the recruitment that you do. Okay, so traditionalists. I've lumped 2 generations together because, as you saw on the poll, this is a very strong volunteer population, but they are exiting our volunteer community. These folks, not the actual folks that are on the screen, but this is my parents' generation. So many of these things ring absolutely true, not only what I saw my parents do, but how our house was run. So we're looking at 1901 to 1945, a pretty big swath of individuals. So first of all, here's what we know: self-sacrificing, work before anything else. There was no putting things off. They did what they needed to do at the moment it needed to be done. And volunteering and serving in their community was just who they were. They liked to find positions, positions that they could enter into not only in work, but also in their volunteer opportunities as well. They wanted to know that this is what I was going to do, and I was going to do this every other Friday, and I knew what I was going to step into. They were okay with routine and repetitive work, again, because they were self-sacrificing. The greater good was more important than what they were going to get out of this. They loved regular, ongoing volunteering. They were fine with scheduling. They liked top-down management. This was definitely true in the Moran household. There was no discussion about what we were going to have for dinner. We were told what we were going to have for dinner, and if we didn't want that, breakfast was at 7 a.m. They had strong organizational loyalty. My dad worked for the same company, I think, for 40 years. They went to the same church forever. Like if they found something they wanted, they were there for good. They were okay with rules. They expected folks to follow rules. Status quo was okay, and they were looking for things that were run efficiently. They weren't much with the fooling around stuff. So the traditionalists. Next are the baby boomers. So the largest population that is listening in right now, and indeed still the largest generation out there, 46 to 64. So for baby boomers, self-fulfillment. This was the generation that sort of created the self-help book. I want to get better at something. I want to be able to improve myself. They're more selective on where they work, more selective on where they vacation, much more selective on where they volunteer. So they're going to get a lot of information before they make that step. They're looking for flexibility. These are folks that are beginning to retire. Self-disclosure, I am in the baby boomer generation, but I was born in '62, so I'm a trailer boomer. But I'm starting to think about that, right? What do I want to do after my work life is over? And I do want to volunteer, but I've got other stuff that I think I want to do too. I still want to be a part of a team. I want to feel vital, and the team can be either working with a group of volunteers or working with a group of staff. I'm looking for something that's more episodic, a little bit more sporadic, not necessarily come and go as I please, but I want to feel valued in what's going on in my life. Love-hate relationship with authority. I love having authority, not so much about dealing with authority. Consensus management. I want to make sure that everything's working okay. We're all on the same page. Cautious organizational loyalty. This is somewhat driven by a lot of things that happened during their growing up period. And they're going to question rules. They don't sort of, as their parents or the preceding generation, that sort of I like rules. They don't so much like rules if they don't understand how it impacts their overall work. So the baby boomers. Gen Xers. Gen Xers are 65 to 1981. I identify a little bit more with these folks. So this group of folks are still in the hunt for making themselves more marketable. They're in their heavy sort of employment phase right now. So they may be looking for ways to increase their skills, make them a little bit more marketable. They want to utilize technology. They were indeed the first adapters of technology. So they're fine with virtual volunteering. They're fine with creating databases. That feels like second nature to them. They're more of an independent problem solver, different than the boomers, which likes consensus management. They want to have the autonomy to figure it out and then come back and bring the goodness to the group. Cool with working on multiple projects. They like hands-off supervision. And by hands-off supervision, that means I want to know that there's someone I can go to with questions, but I don't want to be micromanaged. And that's a very sort of like general term. They respect competence, but not your position or title. You can be executive director or whatever, but if they feel you don't have a clear understanding of what's going on, they may not be interested in working with you. And they have a general mistrust of institutions, banks, the government. Again, they are more independent problem solvers. And then the millennials, 1982 to 2001. This is the bulk right now of AmeriCorps members that I work with. So they're incredibly socially conscious. They want to know why we are using plastic water bottles. Why don't we just have reusable water bottles? They want to know how this impacts people all over the world. They're very plugged into what's happening, and they think of their world as very global. They like personalized work. They want to know that we've thought of this just with them in mind, that I see your strengths, and this is something I think you can do well. They like working in teams, meaning that there's the opportunity to do group work and or group processing. They want immediate outcomes. They are not into menial work at all. They want to know that there was a result at the end of their volunteer opportunity. They're going to assume that you have leading edge technology. So if all of the computers at this time are black and your computers are white, they're going to question why that's so. They assume that you are a technology native. I text, you text. I use Facebook, you use Facebook. It's just sort of in their realm of ways they understand how we communicate. They're flexible on how and where work gets done. The office is a noun. Work is a verb. My dad used to say, I have to go to the office. That meant he was going to work. That is not the way a millennial thinks about how their day-to-day work flows. They see their leaders as intimate allies. They want them to be that. They want to know. They want them to ask questions about them, and they want coaching and feedback, not necessarily always corrective. They want to know that they're getting at something. And they ultimately want to have fun. They want to have fun in their workplace, in their volunteer place, and their school place every single day. Not goofing off fun, but they want to know that there's the opportunity to have a good time. So there are the 5 generations that we know about. And there's one on the rise. Generation Z is the latest term. I've also heard Generation I because of all of the iPhone, the I whatever. These are still yet to be defined, but I'm going to imagine in the next 3 to 4 years, that's going to start to be a generation that's going to be considered in this theory. So let's jump to today. What do we know about volunteer trends in 2016? First, we know that volunteers have goals, and they may not be the goals that you've set up for the volunteer program. They have their own personal goals. They're driven by results, which is hard because some of the issues that volunteers interact with are long-term. If you're tutoring a second grader in the hopes that they're going to attend college, how do you know that they're on that right track? So coming up with ways that the volunteers really see that there are results every single day that they volunteer. They're mobile with their information, they're mobile with their time, they're mobile in every possible way. I always have an interesting question I like to ask folks, where do you call home? Because many of our volunteer Maryland coordinators, Maryland isn't how they identify home. They live here, but they've come from somewhere else. So people are coming in and out of our communities all the time. They're very self-directed. I know what I want, I'm going to find that, and if I can't, then maybe I'm going to try to create that position, or I'm not going to volunteer at all. They have multiple interests. They're going to volunteer in multiple places, and they may not be with you forever. And that goes to our last point. They're seeking short-term opportunities that use their skills or helps them create skills. So the characteristics of volunteering today. The first is volunteering changes throughout our life cycle, and I'll use myself as an example. When I was in school, I volunteered in sports. It was what I was interested in. I was interested in learning about coaching. At that moment, I thought I was going to enter into sort of physical education. That was the way I was going to go, or some sort of therapy. Then when I had kids, I became interested in volunteering in their school until they told me never to come back, meaning my children, not the school. My children were like, yeah, Mom, we're good now. You don't need to volunteer anymore. And then my mom got Alzheimer's, and I still am engaged in the Alzheimer's Association. I'm an advocate for them. I speak in front of funders. I'm telling the story of my family, and I also help them do some fundraising. Volunteers today are different. We're a more global community, thank goodness that we are, but that brings differences into what our volunteer program looks like. And volunteering is a two-way relationship. This is incredibly true of AmeriCorps. It's a service exchange is the way that I talk about it with our members. I have things I want them to do, but I have things that I want them to get out of this as well, and helping them identify what those are so that we're both working towards really good goals. The other thing we know is volunteering is personal. Kind of goes along with that lifestyle stuff, right? If my mom never got Alzheimer's, I'm not 100% sure I would volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association, but it's personal to me now, and so I want to be able to impact that change. Volunteering is a way to transfer and develop skills. I'm going to say that pretty much every resume that comes through our office, whether it's for an AmeriCorps position or for a staff position within our program, folks put on their volunteer opportunities that they've taken on. It could be because of who we are, but they use this as a way to identify things they've done. I have skills in community mediation. I was a community mediator with Community Mediation Maryland. Volunteering in groups appeals to everyone. We've become a little bit more of an isolated society, right? We have more virtual friendships sometimes than we have in-person friendships. And so volunteering with other people helps create a community that maybe we don't have. As was stated in the beginning, I live in Maryland. Folks commute up to an hour and a half each day. That's a lot of time where they're isolated from their communities. So volunteering is a way to really connect with folks. And finding satisfying volunteering is not so easy. Ooh, that one hurts. It hurts deep down in my volunteering soul. Why isn't it easy? Because everyone's banging away. Like, I've got all of these great volunteer opportunities, but why do folks still find it hard to find a really good volunteer opportunity? So that's created a little bit of some gaps. The first one is folks want to look for group volunteering, but you don't offer that. You really are looking for individual volunteering. You're looking for skills volunteers. Folks want to create new skills. You have very defined positions. Folks are looking for flexibility. We're looking for folks that can really commit long-term. Nope, I'm more interested in short-term. I'm looking at what the needs are for my organization, and the volunteers like, I'm looking for what's good for me. So what that's done is created a little bit of a cage match with the organization in the middle and the volunteer needs on one side and the community needs on the other. It creates a difficult dynamic. So I'm just going to throw out some slides now, and this is taken from Volunteering in America. Every year they do a study about volunteering. We submit information about this, about age groups and folks that volunteer. So this is a national average. You can go on and you can look up your particular state. It might be good if you're doing presentations or thinking about who in your state is really interested in volunteering and targeting your recruitment in that way. Nationally, we're pretty evenly spaced. The 20 to 24-year-olds being a little bit less. I think that has a lot to do with being in school and looking to take on a job. The main activity is fundraising. This has been true forever. Not by much, but it is indeed the biggest main activity for volunteers, closely followed by collecting and distributing food. I would put VITA volunteers in that tutoring and teaching and maybe also a little bit in coaching, but that's very much sort of a sports team end. So you're on the map, so that's good. And it's something that folks really want to be able to do. Share skills, share their experience. And then the main organization, meaning where most folks volunteer, is within their religious organization. But here's a little bit of an interesting finding. This also means folks that find out information about volunteering through their religious affiliation. So think about doing presentations to faith-based organizations. That may be an untapped resource at this point. But if you can link it to something that you know about the church's mission, it may be a pretty good fit. And then the volunteer rate. So after September 11th of 2001, volunteering rose significantly. And it remained pretty consistent until around 2006 when it started to decline. And for the past couple of years, it's been pretty steady. And again, this is from 2014. The 2015 information typically comes out somewhere around November, December, January, somewhere in that time frame. So I'll be interested to see if this is still on the decline. Interestingly, it is not the case in our program. The volunteer numbers have continued to increase. And the last thing we're going to look at, and again, this is, I think, a good slide to keep in mind. Volunteers, folks that volunteer, are more likely to be donors. Donors to your organization, donors to their community in general. Almost twice as much as individuals that don't volunteer in their community. So if there's ever sort of a, why are we using volunteers? This is a really great slide to present. Well, these people who are engaged in community engage in multiple ways, not just in time, but also in dollars. So we're going to look at another theory called volunteer types. And this was created by Volunteer Canada. They did a longitudinal study called Bridging the Gaps. I still am in love, absolutely in love with this study, even though it's a little bit to our north. They hit on a lot of things that I definitely am seeing in my own work. So again, a little bit of theory, but I think this is really drilling down much closer than what generational theories do. So the first group that they looked at were youth. Youth was between the ages of 14 and 24. And so they started to think about what do these folks really go after? What are they looking for? And so this is what they came up with. They are interested in looking at education and research. Makes sense because most of them are still in school. They like to serve youth. They like to work with their own folks. They're interested in the environment, so environmental projects. And they like sports. They're looking for flexibility because their parents and their family really impact a lot of what they can do. They are looking at the end of the day or the end of the week or the end of the month or however long they serve that there has been some impact. And they're also looking for some feedback and certifications because they're looking for as service as a way to gain access to something, a job, a school, an award that they could get at graduation. There's another reason why they're doing this. And they do see themselves as world citizens because the world is everywhere with them. Anything that they read about, they can learn about what's happening in another country as well as they can read about something that's happening in their own community. So they're going to bring a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm. And what they're looking for is skills. They're also looking for a fair amount of flexibility, and they're looking for a way to gain friends. And if they could talk to you, they would say, tell me what you need done and not how to do it and when to do it. Then we're going to look at the second group that they studied, and these were folks that were employed. So rather than looking at generations, these are folks that are actively working a full-time, part-time job or have family commitments at home, people that have other things going on. So here's what we know about them. They are very interested in results-oriented. They want to know that they are helping someone, something, the environment improve, and they want to be able, we're getting a little theme here, they want to see the results of their work. They look at volunteering as kind of a hobby, something I do outside of my work world. So I may not be interested in, if I'm an accountant, and I know that was a question that someone asked, what would be the best way to recruit accountants and business professionals? It may be difficult. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But they're thinking of this more as like something I can do for fun. They want efficiency. They want to come in, they want to get their service done, their volunteering done, and they want to get out because they have other things going on. They want to be able to measure their progress and the progress of the folks that they're supporting through their volunteer activities. They're looking for flexibility, and they absolutely for sure want it not to be work. I don't want it to look like work. I want it to absolutely be something that I can enjoy, something that I do outside of my day-to-day grind. So truth be told, I never ever take on volunteer opportunities with people like, we would like you to coordinate volunteers because you have experience in that. Nope, I don't want to do that. I do that in my day-to-day life and I train on it. I would rather learn something different. So if they were going to talk to you, or what they're interested in, is they want to share their skills. Maybe it's not the skills that come from their workforce, their work life. It may be something that they've obtained through their own personal life. And they also bring a lot of passion in a different way than the folks that we looked at previously. They may have different ways that they're going to look at the sort of organizational progression. They want to learn new skills that might make them more marketable, skills that might make them a better parent, skills that might better just make them a better community member. They're looking for results, and they don't want to deal with hierarchy. They already have a boss, whether that boss is their boss at work or their toddler at home. They already have somebody that they're answering to that way. They don't want that to be true here. So they would say, I don't necessarily want to volunteer in what I do all day at work. And then we're looking at folks who are retired. So these are folks that have left the full-time workforce. They may have part-time jobs. They may be providing childcare for a grandchild or a great-grandchild. But they've kind of left the workforce, the traditional workforce. So they're clear leaders. They've been in the workforce for 40, 50 years. So they've had opportunities to make decisions and to put in place processes that have made a difference. They're still the largest volunteer group. If we go from the age of 55 and above, they still are a pretty big volunteer group. They're relatively loyal. If they like you, they're going to like you for a long time, but they want to make sure that you know about them and there's meaningful management. They don't want to be tossed around because they, again, have time, but they want flexibility. I have hobbies that I want to get to. I want to travel. I might have a part-time job. I have grandchildren that I want to take care of. I want to spend more time with my spouse or my friend group. So they're available, but you're going to have to think about what works best for them. So they're going to bring loyalty. They're totally about engagement. They want to make things better in their community. They still want to feel vital. And they're going to bring their leadership. And they're looking for the opportunities to continue to make impact. They want to have a different kind of purpose. And they're looking to gain some new skills. So if they were going to talk to you, they would say, I'll do anything you want. Just do not ask me to go to a meeting. And then the last group they looked at was family volunteers. And this might not be completely true for VITA volunteers, but I still think it's an important volunteer group to look at. So they have busy schedules, right? If you have kids at home, it's totally driven by where and who and what needs to go where. There are differences, obviously, in their abilities. And so they're looking for opportunities that can acknowledge that the parents may have a little bit more skills than the kids, or if you're working with teenagers, my teenagers may be a little bit more active than I am. They're looking for this as a way to connect. The dinner table may not be the best place that we connect. We want to be able to connect through service. And we're looking at, parents are looking for a way to instill values in their kids, which I'm all for, creating the opportunity for their children to see service as a viable option and a needed option in their lives. So they bring an interest and commitment, absolutely. If they say they're going to show up, barring junior barfing on Saturday morning, they're going to be there. And they're looking for some time together. They're looking for ways that they can instill values, and they're looking for family-friendly opportunities. So you've already worked out that risk. My kids aren't going to come in contact with something that they're not going to be able to handle. And they would say, I want to volunteer as a family to instill the sense of volunteerism in my children and continue the betterment of the community later in life. So then the other part of their study, they looked at some big turnoffs. In a second, we'll look at the longer list. But these were the top 4. The first one is perceived organizational politics. If you're orienting a new volunteer and you're walking down the hallway and you run into your coworker and your coworker says, oh my gosh, were you on that conference call this morning? And you're like, mm-hmm. And the coworker's like, oh, we're going to have to talk about that. As a volunteer, I would be like, what the heck happened on the conference call, and how is that going to impact me? They don't want to enter into a place where there maybe is some disharmony. They're okay with things being a little chaotic, but they don't want to walk into a place where there's the politics exist and you have to wrap around them. The other turnoff is they believe that their skills were not being put to the best use. I came in and I said I was really interested in doing X, and then they totally blocked and bridged me, and now I'm over here and I'm doing something that really isn't interesting to me at all. Feeling like they weren't making a difference. There was no results at the end of my volunteer week or my day, or I don't know if the family that I worked with, if they're at a better place. Frustration with a lack of organization related to a volunteer activity. Too many volunteers, and you show up and you're asked to guard trash. Seriously happened to me. Having the clear understanding of, we know what you're going to do, we're completely organized, and we know the complete process. We've got you. All you need to do is show up, we'll get you ready, we'll get you trained, and we'll give you some good feedback about how you're doing. So here's the longer list of reasons why folks decided not to volunteer. And for folks that are turned off by volunteerism, they may never volunteer again. It is that big of a deal. So I take this really seriously, right? Because my goal is to not have folks decide that they're not going to volunteer. I want folks to continue to volunteer. So you have some interesting information, I think, in terms of the study they did. So where do you start? Here. So this is the cycle of volunteer program development. It was created by Volunteer Maryland's founders, and we use it in 3 ways. The first way we use it is to look at where organizations are when they enter into a partnership with us. Truth be told, they're typically between 2, which is foundation building, and 3, program implementation. We're talking a lot about implementation today. Our application mirrors the big picture. Remember we talked about community need? They talk about that in the application that they come into. If you don't remember anything from today, you can actually use this as a guide for figuring out ways to establish really strong volunteer practices. And we're already connected now. You have my contact information. You'll have it forever. So if you have questions, I'm glad to talk them through. Again, my goal is long-term volunteer sustainability, whether it's in Maryland or it's somewhere else. I think that that only makes our small communities and our large communities better as a whole. So we're going to talk about another theory, but this one, I want you to start thinking about yourself. So the theory we're going to look at kind of gets to why do we do stuff? The simple question, why do people otherwise leave Netflix in the comfort of their own home and their couch, which is really what you're up against, or their family, or grilling commutes, or the perceived, I don't have any time. And I'll be honest, I don't know if that's true or not. I feel that my mom, we had 7 kids, my mom was busy all the time, but she still had time to volunteer. I don't necessarily know if this is a perception of busyness or it's actual busyness. I can't, but we're overcoming a lot of things to get folks to decide they're going to volunteer. And beyond that, if you're emailing me, my first action when I open my email is to delete. And so there's a lot of things that we have to come over. So we have to understand why would I want to do this? What in your recruitment message, in your pitch, gets me to overcome this? So I want you to do 2 things. While we're talking about this, and again, it's still a theory, I want you to think about who you are in this theory, because that definitely has implications about how you recruit. And I want you to think about the kinds of folks that really work well within your volunteer opportunity, and do they fall under any of these types? And are you really speaking to that? Are you really recognizing and honoring, valuing why folks would want to volunteer? Okay, so we're going to go with Dr. David McClelland in the 50s and into the 60s. Dr. David McClelland worked with some doctoral candidates, and he came up with a theory. And his theory was that there's always some motivation why folks do things. Makes a lot of sense, not necessarily a big reach there. But he wanted to drill down and really understand why folks do what they do. So he had graduate assistants following folks around, and every few minutes they would say, what are you thinking about? And it would be like, I'm thinking about my family, or I'm thinking about the work I have to do, or I'm thinking about that new great idea I'm going to come up with. There was all kinds of things that they were thinking about. And so he came up with 3 affiliations, 3 motivational needs. The first is the need for power. The second is the need for affiliation. And the third is the need for achievement. Each of us have each of these within us, but typically there's one that stands out more than others. So we're going to look at each one. So the 3 that they talk about again is achievement, affiliation, and power. So achievement, or achievers. So achievers are the list makers. So if you are a list maker, you have a to-do list somewhere on a flat surface in front of you that has little check boxes or circles or some way that you're identifying that you're getting them done. Maybe you have an Excel spreadsheet that does that as well. Maybe you came up with a task that wasn't on your to-do list and you completed it, and then you put the check box there and checked it off because you just like to know at the end of the day, this is what you have done. You quantify your success in the tasks that are completed. So they look for specific tasks. And within those tasks, they're always interested in learning something new about how their work is done. And they like challenges within that too. So these are folks that are really like, let me get in there and dig through it, and I'll figure it out, and we are going to get there. They need concrete feedback. Not just like, you did a great job today, thanks. They want to know why they did a great job today. They're not fluffy. They enjoy independence. Tell me what you need to do. I'm going to go do it. Then I'm going to check it off, and I'm going to tell you that I did. And they're great at delegation. If you have a project where you need folks to be delegated, oh, they love that. Love it, love it, love it. I will put you there, and you there. But they're going to get bored if they're not challenged. And they focus more on tasks than on people. It doesn't mean that they're heartless, but it just means we got to get through all of these checklists and all of the things that we need to do. I'm not necessarily going to be interested in learning about you at this point. So achievement-focused folks. The next one is affiliation. So affiliators are interested in relationships. Now, not huggy relationships, not like that. They're not sort of people that sit around and just want to chat all day. That's not what I'm talking about. These are folks that were relationships in their office, relationships in their volunteer world, in their community are very important to them. If they don't feel that, if they don't feel that there's a harmony, that there's a connection, they're going to feel a little bit out of sorts. They enjoy working with others. They want to know the other folks that are taking on similar roles. It can be virtual or it could be in person, but they want to know that there's this larger community. They need someone that wants to know about them. They need a caring supervisor. I am an affiliator. And so when I meet with people, the first thing I ask is, how are you? But not in the American way of how are you, which I really don't care how are you are. I'm just saying it because it's just culturally what we do. I actually want to know how you are, because it's important for me to know how you are before we can get at any of the feedback that we're going to talk about. So I get a chance to sort of check in with them. Where are you today? They want time to chat. So these are the folks that are going to come in and be like, hey, Patrice, how's it going? And they're going to want to talk for a few minutes. Knowing that that's true, I like to talk with people. I like to walk into other folks' office and have a conversation with them rather than emailing them or chit-chatting them, which drives the folks in my office that are achievers crazy, because they're like, do you see what I'm doing? And I'm like, I do see what you're doing, but I'm going to talk this through. They want to be part of a team, exclamation point. They want to know that everyone is working towards the greater good. But they may avoid conflicts or neglect to report on problems right away, and they may just leave. If they're having a hard time, if they're not getting along with other volunteers, or they have issues with you, they may just stop showing up because they just don't know how to work through it. And again, harmony really important to them. So the affiliation pieces. And then power. Power gets a bad name, but my second closest is power. By just like one sort of simple answer, I'm also a power person. They like to bring about change. Change in how folks are better able to accrue assets. Change in how we're affecting policy change. Change in our community. But to bring about that change, they're okay with testing the limits of authority. And so sometimes they can be a little bit less interested in the details and a little bit more interested in the ultimate goal. So they're not good with tasks. They're better with sort of that larger picture. They want to debate the rules because they want to know how things can be better. There's always a better way. So they're going to need someone who has strong leadership, someone who can be like, this is why we do it this way. It's important that we recognize that. They need clear policies, but they also want inclusion in the decision-making process. That could be everything from the kind of coffee that you serve at the volunteer get-togethers, all the way up to the way that you're going to train everyone on how to do a specific piece. And again, they're going to focus on that big picture more than relationships and more on day-to-day tasks. They're really focused on the long-term outcome of the organization. So we're going to stem a little bit away from theory. We've looked at 3 now. We've looked at generational theory, we've looked at lifestyle theory, and then we've looked at Dr. David McClellan's motivational theories. All important stuff. But I'm going to bet that you also want to know, okay, that's great, Patrice, but how do I get to the place where my volunteer program is making some sense? So now we're going to exit the theory and sort of go to get a little bit more into the practicalities of our work. And that starts with crafting our positions. So as Jenny said at the beginning, Volunteer Maryland has worked with organizations that have recruited VITA volunteers, Maryland Cash, Baltimore Cash. We worked with a community action agency in a county in Maryland. We've worked with others as well, but those are the most current. And this is a tough role, right? Because when we use the word taxes, that sends up certain feelings with individuals. We had a guest presenter at our training a few weeks ago, Sue Rogan, who was the executive director of the Maryland Cash Campaign. She was talking to our volunteer Maryland coordinators about managing assets. I loved that term because, and I know a lot of VITA sites use that as well, which is awesome, because it talks about sort of things that I want. I want our communities to be thriving. And one of the things that we know is communities thrive when folks feel that they have and are able to live in the communities that they choose. And so that has a lot to do with managing assets. So again, some of my presentation is going to be a little bit general, but I'm going to talk a little bit now about some examples of how we've seen this work well in some of the VITA sites that we've worked through. So keep those theories in mind as we move into this section. So Susan Ellis. Susan Ellis is the grande dame of volunteer program development. She has written many a book. She also has her own website called energizeinc.org, where she pontificates very well on volunteer management. So she's been around for a long time. And one of the things that she said, and we still take this to heart, is the simplest mistake is volunteers being brought in and they don't know what they're going to be doing, just showing up. I'm going to imagine that that's not true for your organizations, but that is one of the biggest reasons why folks don't volunteer. I don't understand what I'm doing. There's no clear direction, no clear idea of how I'm going to work. So we're going to look at a position description, and we're going to start to look at it just in terms of what makes sense, and again, this is best practices, what makes sense in terms of creating a position description. So the first is just the title. So in front of me, I have a position description for a volunteer, and this is through Maryland Cash. And they have several. They have a VITA volunteer, volunteer income tax assistant, so it says it right on there. They have a financial education instructor and a financial coach. So here's the great part about that. Very rarely do they use the word volunteer. It's already in VITA. That's okay. But it talks a little bit more about what the person is going to be doing. It doesn't just say volunteer. And that includes folks into the larger picture of what you're going to be doing. Then the purpose. The purpose connects folks to the community need. And really states, like, why is this important within the community itself? How will this volunteer position help? And so really quickly, just a few sentences. So if I was going to look at the Maryland Cash one, it said, VITA volunteers prepare quality tax returns for eligible filers and help them save money on tax preparation fees. So I understand that I'm going to help folks create quality tax returns, and it's going to help them in turn save money. Then a quick description of duties. What are they going to do? It talks a little bit about in the purpose already. What's the essential duties that folks are going to do? Qualifications. What skills or knowledge do you want folks to come in with in order to get to the duties that were described above? It could just be just able to do simple calculations. It could be ability to work with a diverse group of individuals. It could be all kinds of things, qualifications that you're looking for. For many of the positions that are listed in the flyer in front of me, didn't necessarily say that you had to come in with skills, that they were going to be able to take that on and help you. Time requirements, what are you looking for? And be realistic. Don't say a couple times a month if it's really every week. Orientation and training, important here, right? What am I going to do? How are you going to help me be able to prepare for this role? Is it ongoing? Some feedback that was sent in was that the training seems excessive. Maybe taking a little bit of time to talk about that in terms of it's broken up into many of the modules you can access online. We offer it at different times during the week. We offer Saturday training. Talking about that and helping maybe folks identify, okay, I can do that. I can overcome that. Then benefits to the volunteer, not to the organization, but what are folks going to get out of doing this? A couple of benefits on this flyer: receive free training and certification. Awesome, but what kind? That's a question that I would want to know. Attending several networking opportunities, but what does that look like? Help build a stronger and financially confident community. How? and then gain access to ongoing professional development and opportunities. What is that? Do I get any certain certifications with that? What is the benefit of doing all of that training? It needs to be fleshed out just a little bit more. It's good, but it can be better because we want to overcome some of the reasons why people would delete. Are you going to get evaluated at all? What's the reporting procedure? Where will the volunteering take place? If it's statewide, you may want to list opportunities that are close by where folks are going to be working or where you're doing your recruiting. Who are they going to report to on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis? Is it you or is it someone else? And then who's the agency contact? This is very rarely used as a recruitment tool because this identifies the place for the volunteer within your organization. You completely understand how this volunteer works within your system that's already created. And it's a great document to share with other staff members, but not a really great recruitment method. We don't post position descriptions when we recruit for volunteer mailing coordinators, our AmeriCorps members, but we take snippets of this, right? We want to be able to talk about this in realistic terms, but it's kind of a dry document. But it really does create a sense of place for the volunteer mailing coordinators that are working within our organization. So to help with this, and again, I've been droning on for a while, so it's time to sort of refresh your mouse and chat a little bit. We're going to start talking about this, but we're going to only talk about 4 areas: title, the purpose, the duties, and the benefits for a specific kind of family pet. Now, if we were doing this in person, I would break you into groups and you would come up with your own family pet. But since we're not able to do that because we have about 200 folks on this webinar, we're going to come up with a position description for the pet that I've identified as a fire-breathing dragon. I mean, who doesn't want a fire-breathing dragon? Come on. Just for heat alone, all kinds of things that this fire-breathing dragon could do for your family. And why did I choose something silly? Because we have to have fun with this. If folks don't see that this is an opportunity to really enjoy volunteering, why would anybody want to do it? So having fun with it, not necessarily being light, but making sure that folks see that this is really something that's worth doing. It is worth your time. It's good to start with something a little bit silly. So here's what we're going to do. So keep the fire-breathing dragon image in your mind. We're going to first come up with a position title, and this is where you're going to use your chat box again, and I'm going to ask Jenny to call out some answers. What would be the title for our fire-breathing dragon? And I'm going to say you can't just say fire-breathing dragon. Start thinking about what this fire-breathing dragon is going to bring to your family. It could be fire starter. It could be heating our home. It could be guard dragon. Whatever it is, just really quickly, don't think about it too much. Start typing in a few position descriptions, position titles, for the fire-breathing dragon. That's going to be our new family pet.
Okay, so far we have Puff as one option. Life of the Party is another one. How to Train a Fire-Breathing Dragon as a Pet. Striker, Pete the Protector, Puffy, Warm, Garden Debris Manager, Hothouse No Smoke, Security, World-Class Barbecue Lighter, that's a funny one.
Oh, cool.
Protector, S'mores Expert, Flame Your Passion, Security, Campfire Starter, Barbecue Coordinator, Treasure Guard, Fight Instructor, Fire Starter, and many other options that you're sending in a ton of wonderful titles, so thank you.
Good, good, good. So we can be creative about that, right? You can be creative in how you describe this position as well. I loved the barbecue coordinator because it made, if I was an achiever, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to be able to light that barbecue like no other fire-breathing dragon. If I was an affiliator, as I am, and you talked about that, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to start their family barbecues. That's awesome. Like, I'm so about creating relationships. And if I was a power person, I'd be like, I'm going to come up with a better way of lighting that barbecue because obviously this family has problems and I'm just going to be able to get them on the right path. It appeals to each person. So second we're going to do is talk about purpose. Why? And again, let's restate what purpose means. Connect to the community needs statement and overall agency mission. How is this volunteer position going to help? So think about the title that you came up with, if you did, and come up with a couple of quick words about the purpose of this pet dragon.
One has come in: light your fire, warm companion, and keep family safe are some ideas people had.
Very good. Very good. So, yep, you're getting it. So beyond the title, I'm starting to understand, okay, how am I going to be a good part of this family? So in the essence of time, we're going to jump to the benefits to the volunteer. Now, this is for the dragon, right? If I'm going to become your family pet and I'm a fire-breathing dragon, what are going to be some of the benefits of becoming your family's pet, of volunteering for that? And just type them in. What do you think some of the benefits that you can offer and the volunteer will, the dragon will gain from being your family pet?
So some options people thought of were 3 square meals, love, companionship. This is funny. With your wings and flames, you light the path to Khaleesi's return to her rightful legacy on the Iron Throne. In class.
Okay. Very good.
Lifelong friendships, continuous source of food, endless supply of marshmallows, hugs and kisses. Yeah.
Cool.
So there's
cool.
just a few of the ideas.
Yeah, very good. You know, can you offer them health benefits? Dental included, you know, access to fire-breathing material. I don't know, like what are you going to be able to do? What kind of skills are they going to be able to gain from this? You guys are definitely on the right track. So fun to do, right? When we're talking about a fire-breathing dragon, sometimes hard to do when we're thinking about a volunteer position within our organization. So don't be creative. You don't have to make it up, but there are a lot of really great benefits to doing this, and so don't bury it. Put it right out there. If your organization is connected to another tax preparer and they do some training for you, or you're connected to a college, our training is connected to a college. We ask our volunteer coordinators to go through a lot of training. We wanted it vetted with an outside entity that they could have claimable skills on their resumes. Can you do that? What benefits are folks going to come out of this? And making the community a better place shouldn't be discounted. It is important. Folks volunteer because they want to make things better. And so absolutely, you're hitting on that with a fire-breathing dragon. You can hit on it with your volunteer opportunities within your organization as well. Okay, so then, all right, so you got that position description. All right, we understand what folks are going to do. So now you have to start planning it out. So first is, what have you already done and what isn't working, which can be significant, right? Every year when we start to recruit for organizations that are going to partner with us, because they volunteer to partner with us, and volunteer mailing coordinators, individuals that are going to take on a year of AmeriCorps service, we have to look at what worked and what didn't work. This year, our national recruitment flopped. It was down something like 80%. So we have to figure out why that happened. And we're not going to give that up, but we have to think about why it didn't work as well as it has in the past. We want to make sure that we understand what kind of volunteer we're looking for agency-wide. Everyone understands within our organization. And for some organizations, that's large. For some folks, it's just you. What specific volunteer positions and what do you need? And then establish deadlines. Deadlines can be, you have your first training, or when tax season begins, or whatever that is, and stick to those deadlines. Volunteer recruitment can be ongoing, but you certainly have to have those sort of like touchstones in there so that you make sure that you're getting at where you're going, setting goals, just like helping folks set financial goals. It's important to set goals for your recruitment within, not just sort of say, we need 15 new volunteers. When do you need them? How are you going to onboard them? Really coming up with deadlines to be able to do that. And I'm going to send Jenny a sample template for planning recruitment. You can use it or not use it, but sometimes that's one of the questions we get is, how do you even know what you should be looking at? And then thinking about the kinds of recruitment that you do. So in our estimation, there are 3 kinds of recruitment: personal, targeted, and general. So I think it's important to understand that absolutely every ask is going to end with that personal. But in this messaging, we kind of think about it as a Venn diagram. You know, there's 2 circles with a sweet spot in the middle. In one circle, we talk about what your target audience would like to do. So you're going to recruit college students. You're going to recruit PTA members. You're going to recruit individuals that are in a local church. So what is it that they would want to do? Understanding what would resonate with them. Doing, I call it the spray and pray method, doesn't work. You have to put a little bit more time into thinking about what folks would want to do. And then thinking about what your audience would want. So your target, and then what is your general audience. Somewhere in the middle of those 2 things, what you want your target audience to do and what they want to do, is your sweet spot, creating that message that fits both ends. So general is like, we're having a fundraiser and we just need folks to stand outside and wave you in with a flag. A few years ago, I did a Race for the Cure, and that's what I did. It was super general. I didn't have to have any training. I could just show up early in the morning. They gave me a vest and a flag and a flashlight, and I stood out in a parking lot and I just waved folks in. I really loved it. First, I loved being able to give folks direction with a flag, and it was over and done. Didn't have any reporting to do. I just dropped off my vest and went along on my day. So very general recruiting. Don't need any specific skills to do that. Targeted is where maybe there's a little bit more skills. I'm going after a specific audience. So if I was going to be doing check-in at a race, they may look for folks that are more engaged in sort of like the interpersonal skills, or someone who is good with a lot of detail, or okay under pressure, a little bit more targeted. For you, it might be individuals that are interested in working in community in terms of financial assets, not necessarily accountants or tax preparers that are already doing this, but folks that may be interested in the bigger picture, which is helping folks become financially stable. And then that personal ask, I think you can do this. So an individual responds to a flyer or something that they saw, and they're like, hey, I'm interested in this, following up with them. And I'm going to tell you, people lose interest in volunteering within 48 hours of the original message they sent. So that's 2 days. Then after 2 days, it goes down exponentially about their interest level. If you go more than a week, they don't even really remember that they've asked you, and they're already judging you because you didn't get back to them on time. So once you open that recruitment portal, you have to sort of be like, from 9 to 10 every day, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at folks that are interested in volunteering and getting information out there, because 2 days, that's 2 days, that's not a lot of time. And I have reached out to volunteer within organizations, and I never heard back. I'll never volunteer for them. And I also recommend that people don't volunteer for them. So word of mouth still works. So thinking about those 3 things, but always knowing that that personal ask is where you want to end up. So thinking about our position description, which I said again, that's not a recruitment tool, right? Thinking about a recruitment message. So recruitment messages go like this: a statement of need, how you can help, addressing fears and barriers, listing a couple benefits, and who you need to contact. So thinking about our fire-breathing dragon who is going to become a barbecuer, we continually burn our steaks, or whatever it is, help family eat well, or stop the mishandling of grilled vegetables. Something along the line of, this is why we need you. How can you help? We're looking for folks that have fire-breathing ability to come and light our grill on a daily basis. And then addressing the fears and barriers. We've already thought about flammable materials. You will not be put in danger, and you'll actually go through a training so that you can make sure that you're lighting the grill in a way that's protective for not only our personal environment, but for you as well. The benefits are, you're going to eat on the regular. You will be able to eat the fruits of your fire breathing labor, and then contact me. I'd be glad to talk to you. So some tips about that. First of all, keep it updated. Don't create one flyer and be like, ta-da, and put it in your museum of good things that you've created and never update it. Update it constantly. Keep thinking of new ways that you can talk about what you do. Switch it up based on who's the listener. I don't talk about AmeriCorps the same way I talk to organizations that are going to partner with us as I do with individuals that are going to be members. I don't talk about it the same way with my family. I think about how I'm going to talk with this based on who I'm talking to, whether that is an in-person person or I'm talking more in a virtual way. And incorporate stories of success, stories of challenges. It doesn't always have to be dun, dun, dun. Sometimes it can be dun, da, da, da. How are volunteers really able to make a difference in the organization, and practice it? Practice what you're talking about, and don't let it ever become sort of methodical or rote. And when I talk about AmeriCorps, I try to go from deep inside wherever my AmeriCorps roar is, and that's how I talk about what we do. Because if I'm excited, I have more of an opportunity to capture someone who will be excited as well. So thinking about what's your story, and we're going to look at a few examples of stories, ways that organizations have used lots of different methods to get information out. So I'm going to imagine that most folks use some sort of social media platform. At this point in the game, I don't know how an organization can survive without it. We have at Volunteer Maryland, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we are using Instagram, we are looking at engaging in Pinterest, we are on LinkedIn. So we're trying hard to get information out there, but what we do know is this takes time. It takes devoted staff to carve out time on their day-to-day to come up with content. So we think about it in a multimedia way. Instagram is all photos to tell our story. We have a blog that's more sort of talking about the day-to-day life of a Volunteer Maryland coordinator. We try to be inspirational. We try to show where folks are really impacting change. We ask questions. We've had minimal success with that. I think folks are questioned out at this point, and we try to incorporate humor. So I wanted to show you a way that an organization incorporated humor. So this is obviously the Humane Society in Monmouth County. And I love this visual in every possible way that you can like it. There's a story going on here. The cat is helping the individual create, I'm going to imagine, a dating profile. And the cat is giving the man advice. Awesome. And really, it's just sort of like, that's hilarious, and I want to know more about that organization. It didn't talk about that the feline population is out of control. It just showed that this cat can make a difference in the life of an individual living in our community. And I think that that's just an amazing way to talk about this. The next one I want to talk about is the Ice Bucket Challenge, and we are going to watch a video in a minute. And truth be told, there is brief nudity in this, but I think we can all handle it. So the Ice Bucket Challenge. I was indeed challenged to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. I decided to donate money because I'm not so much about dumping cold water. But every time I walked outside in my neighborhood, someone was outside being filmed dumping cold water on their head. They raised millions of dollars through this simple act. So we're going to pull up a video because you know something has gone viral when The Simpsons are willing to take this on. So we're going to quickly show a video of Homer Simpson talking about the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Hi, sorry about the audio not working. We'll send a link to that later so you can watch it on your own time.
Yep, and I think everybody pretty much got the gist. It was Homer Simpson saying he was going to take an Ice Bucket Challenge, dumped a small glass of water on him, and in comes Bart and drops a very large bucket of water on him. But again, it went absolutely viral, that there were all over Facebook. Now, I don't know if I will never be able to create an ad campaign like that, right? But what can you do based on what you know about this particular piece? Can you have families talk about what this volunteer activity has enabled them to do in real terms? We were able to improve our family life by X. What can you show through a story? And again, it might not be Homer Simpson, but that's what drew folks in. It's that person that was showing them that they could make a difference by doing this particular piece. And then it also created an opportunity to be a naysayer, right? So looking at what's going on out there, and there's a lot going on out right now about folks being able to build financial assets. I mean, God, the political activity is all around that. How can your organization be a part of that messaging in a way that shows that there are organizations out there that are making a true difference? It's not sound bites. It's actually happening right in their community. And if you devote a few hours, you're going to be able to do that too. That's a huge way of getting in a story that's already there. And folks are tired of it, right? I don't know how many of my friends are saying, like, I just can't anymore. I need good news. You're good news. Get out there and talk about it. Let folks know how you're able to make a difference by helping folks create better assets. So I am indeed a part of AmeriCorps. And so on Friday, AmeriCorps symbolically enrolled its 1 millionth member. That's a lot of folks. When we think about Peace Corps is only about 200 and some thousand individuals that have done Peace Corps. Peace Corps has been around a lot longer. I love Peace Corps. But 1 million members, that's something to celebrate. And so let's just going to skip the video because I'm afraid maybe the audio won't work. We'll send you the link afterwards. It's worth a watch. It's about 3 minutes. But it tells the story of one program in AmeriCorps and being one of 1 million. Truth be told, I'm writing a blog post right now. I'm hoping to post it next week. It's going to be 3 of 1 million. I'm an AmeriCorps alum. My daughter is an AmeriCorps alum. And my spouse is an AmeriCorps alum. So I'm going to tell that story. What stories do you have? Can you tell it through a blog? Can you tell it through a visual? How can you get the story out there about what your organization does? So sharing news, sharing really good news. How much money have you helped folks acquire by doing strong financial planning in terms of tax preparation? That's a great quantifiable number. I can bite that. It's tasty. Or can you connect it to some sort of education that's going out there? And can you connect it to some events that you're having, or events that are in the news already? How can you connect to the bigger story? So this is some things that I saw, and some of these are pretty current. November and December, folks are always looking for volunteer opportunities, right? So this food bank in San Antonio is going to have a sort-a-thon. They're capitalizing on the fact that a lot of folks are going to want to do that at that moment, and so they put information out there that this is a great way for you to volunteer over the holidays. And then back to AmeriCorps, talking about some great impacts for just one AmeriCorps member. What do you know about one VITA volunteer? And I don't know if that's even the correct way to talk about them, a VITA individual. What do you know about historically what they're able to do? Can you put it in a cool graphic? There is a great website. It's called like infographic.com. You put in the information, you figure out what your graphic wants to look at, and it'll spit something out that'll look very professional. I'm not an infographic creator, but there are tools out there that can enable you to do it. So then thinking about your own organization and that fine tightrope between the volunteer and the organization itself. So the first thing, making sure that you design specific volunteer roles, but also allowing the volunteers to determine some of their roles themselves, giving folks that flexibility, right? I think that was indeed someone that's a point that someone brought up. Flexibility. Flexibility for not only my organization, but flexibility for the volunteers as well. So how can you create that without giving up the farm, right? There are ways that you can be a little bit more flexible with folks, being able to offer them the opportunity to have a say in the work that you do, not in tax law, right? Like there's no say in tax law, but where can there be avenues that you can offer the opportunities for volunteers to determine their scope? And then being organized but not bureaucratic. So Volunteer Maryland is a federally funded state agency. We can't be more bureaucratic than we are right now. There are rules, rules, and rules. So we try to balance that out, right? We understand what we need to do, and we understand where the risk lies, and our policy and what we do is in that realm. We try not to be too bureaucratic, and if we are, we explain why that exists. Folks want to know why. There's a really good book out called Start with Why. I'm reading it, a recommendation by my program manager. That's a really good place to start. Why do we have to do it this way? Really answering folks' questions. And then matching the skills of the organization, but not assuming that everybody that has those skills wants to bring them. One of the folks asked, again, how to recruit accountants and business professionals. How can you tie it to their employer? Is there an employee-supported volunteer program? Would they be interested in entering into it with you? What can you offer them? The benefits to the volunteer. So if I reached out to an accountant or an accounting agency and I was looking for a couple of volunteers, what's in it for them? And how can I get their employer on board? They're able to count the hours as work time, something along those lines that make it beneficial to them. Everyone wants to use skills related to their profession and their trade or education, but not always in the way that you think they want to. And then again, thinking of those big turnoffs again, thinking where there could be perceived organizational politics, making sure that folks really do see where their skills are being put to the best use and feeling like they're making a difference, and communicating that with them with that personal notes, thank you notes, personal phone calls. We have a volunteer mailing coordinator. He calls all of his volunteers within a month. They're community mediators. He checks in on how they're doing. Fantastic. And their retention rate has gone through the roof. And then that frustration with lack of organization related to the volunteer activity. When people show up to do something, they know that you've thought it all through. All the materials that they need are going to be there. The training is going to start on time and it's going to end on time. All of these small little details that don't seem like much, but they really go towards a strong volunteer program. And then this is my last slide, then I promise I'm going to stop talking because we're almost at 4:30. This is really about relationship building. So think about how you've created relationships with funders, how you've created relationships with coworkers. Very similar. Folks want good communication. So when I reach out to you with a question, I want to know that someone's going to respond to them. I want folks to know that they value my time and they stick to that, that there's mutual respect. I respect you, you respect me, and we all respect the clients that we work on. That there's honesty and trust in what we do, and there's equality and fairness. Folks aren't held to a different standard because you've known them longer. Everyone is held at the same standard. And there's ultimately support. Again, I'm learning this, right? I want to feel like I have someone to talk to if I have a question, if I'm unsure, that I know that this is going to be okay. The experience we had with both Baltimore Cash Campaign and the Maryland Cash Campaign, they do that fantastically. Because they really build that into their very first interaction with a volunteer. We're here for you. We are on the same page. We are going to work with you. And I know this to be true. I've read the final reports. I've seen the outcome of their work. And they're really great at doing that. And I know that you can be too. So just a couple of big ideas, theories, and some practices around that. I know that there's going to be more that's going to be offered about volunteer recruitment and management. And I'm also a resource now. I'm happy to talk things through. But I am indeed going to stop talking, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jenny to see if there were any questions that we want to put out before we close out the webinar.
All right. If any of you have any questions, please type them into the questions box right now so we can get them to Patrice. So someone did ask earlier, Patrice, if they could get a copy of the volunteer positions that Baltimore Cash uses. Do you think?
I will reach out to them to make sure that it is okay to share them. Um, so I will double check with them, and if it's okay, then I will pass them along.
Okay.
But I think yes, but I don't want to misspeak.
People are asking about Patrice's contact information and the slides. We will be emailing you all the slides. Someone asked, what is the Cool Graphics web address? So it's for the infographics. Do you know what the website is for that?
So I believe it's like infographic creator. If you just type in create an infographic, um, free and fee ones will show up. We have used one, and I wish that I had the name of it. And if I can find it, I'll email it to you, Jenny. It's super simple. You have to register just like everything, and you'll get some spammy emails every once in a while. But otherwise, it's helped us create some really good infographics that we've used for funders. And to help, we had a administration change about 1.5 years ago in Maryland. We used infographics to explain how our program works in state government. It was met very well. And we also use infographics when we talk to our volunteer mailing coordinators about their impact. So it is a great visual, right, to show impact. But I think if you just type that into your search bar, stuff will pop up, and then it just becomes a functionality and where it makes sense. I also like this thing called Powtoon. You can create a cartoon, and there's a lot of functionality for free. But if you wanted to create like a little sort of like quick vignette about what does a volunteer do, you can create that. Again, folks are very visual now. We use it as a way to onboard some of our volunteer mailing coordinators. So I recommend Powtoon as well.
So was that Powtoon? Is that what
Yep.
you said?
Yep. Powtoon. Powtoon. And yeah, and again, a lot of the functionality is absolutely free.
Okay, cool. And we'll send all these links to you in an email afterwards. So if you didn't catch it now, you'll get that later. And I did get a message from Sharon of Baltimore Cats who said it is absolutely okay to share the position descriptions that they use. So we'll be getting those to you as well.
All right, yeah. Sharon Baldwin, she rocks it, folks, every single day, every day.
Yes, and she'll be on our next webinar.
Oh, so sign up right now. Like whatever you're doing, she brings it. Yep. I want to go to that one. So send me the link. I would love to sign up for that one. She's awesome.
It looks like those are all the questions we have. And if you have any questions that we did not address today, you can either email me at jhuang, Jhuang, at cbpp.org, or send it to our just send it through the website, and I will get back to you on that. So thank you, Patrice, so much for your very engaging and informative presentation.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for all of the work that you do and all of the folks that were listening on. It's truly appreciated. So thanks so much.
Yes. And before you leave, we just want to make sure that everyone is registered for next week's webinar. So today, Patrice did an amazing job focusing on more of the theoretical framework for recruiting volunteers. But next week, our presenters will share exactly what recruitment strategies have worked for them, where they recruit volunteers, and how they manage volunteer relations. We'll also include specific tips for partners who are in more rural areas and how they can find volunteers. And as we mentioned before, it'll be Keely Andrews, Lauren Schwams, and Sharon Baldwin. And Sharon has worked pretty closely with Patrice in the past, so she'll really tie in a lot of this theoretical framework to her part of the presentation as well. So thank you all for joining, and thank you so much, Patrice, for giving a great presentation. And again, apologies for all the trouble with the audio. We will try to get that worked out by next week's presentation. So please, if you're still on, thank you again for joining us, and we hope you will stay in touch. You can always shoot us an email at eitcoutreach@cbpp.org, and get more information from our website or blog. We love hearing from you, and you'll get all of our contact information in an email later. So if you did not jot anything down, do not worry about it. We'll be sending all this information to you later on. All right, well, thanks again, everyone, and have a great day.